Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. If it's your first time here, I'm Dustin. V is missing from the video today because she is actually working on the brand new and improved version of our website. Should be out in a couple months and it is going to be awesome. Today we are going to be starting a series that I have wanted to do for a long time, where we kind of peel back the curtain a little bit and show what goes into the making of our videos. That way, if it's something that you would like to do for yourself, maybe it'll give you a little bit of a head start. And we're going to be starting off by going over a plugin that saved our butts recently. You may remember if you saw the Mine Exploring video that we talked about a plugin called Flicker Free by Digital Anarchy. If you spend time shooting your travels or just video in general, there's a chance you may have encountered flicker in your videos. Fluorescent lights, TV and computer screens, and we've recently found out that certain types of headlights can cause a ton of flicker in your video. That was the case in a couple recent videos that we shot. It's kind of hard to see how bad the flickering is on that little GoPro screen, and it wasn't until we got it home and put it on the big screen of the computer that we saw just how severe the flickering was. That footage was pretty much completely unusable the way that it was. So I ended up going on YouTube and searching for some sort of a fix in the settings of Premiere Pro, but ended up coming up empty-handed. So I ended up turning to my old friend Google, and that's where I was introduced to Flicker Free. On the Digital Anarchy website, they do have a demo version of Flicker Free, so you can see if it will work for your footage. But just a note, it will be completely watermarked, and for some reason on my computer, it played back at a really slow frame rate, but I could still tell that it was going to work. In this video, I'm going to give you a quick review of the Flicker Free plugin, and then we're going to dive into Premiere and actually use it on some of our clips. So let's get started. The first category that we will be going over is price. At the time of the recording of this video, Flicker Free cost $149, and that is a decent chunk of change. That might put it slightly out of reach for just your, average weekend guy out there shooting some video, but I will definitely say that after using the plugin, it is very impressive and, in my opinion, well worth the cost. The next category is ease of use, and using this plugin is as easy as finding it in the tool bin and dropping it on all of your affected clips. From there, you can do some additional tweaking in the settings to really fine-tune the footage, and we're going to be going over that in just a second. The next category is software compatibility. Not a Premiere Pro user? No worries. They also have versions that work in Final Cut, DaVinci Resolve, Sony Vegas, and Avid. It also works with After Effects, Assimilate Scratch, and other OpenFX host applications. And it also works on Mac and Windows machines as well. The next category is one that I think is really important, and that's customer service. The crew over at Digital Anarchy could not be nicer. Every time I had a question, I wrote to them and they responded right back with a really lengthy answer that covered all of my questions and then some. So thanks a ton, guys. I really appreciate you. And I think one of the biggest questions is, does it work? And the answer would be a resounding yes. Every once in a while, you might see just the tiniest little sprinkle of a flicker, but that could very well be user error on my part. Even with that, this plugin has given us the opportunity to make videos that would not otherwise be possible. If I was able to make a request for a future version of this plugin, it would be having the ability to make a preset inside the plugin. During the Mine Exploration video, I found some settings that seem to work really well with the plugin, and it would be really cool to be able to save those as a preset for possible future use. And now that we have that all covered, let's jump into Premiere Pro and see this plugin in action. Just a quick warning before we proceed, the video we are about to watch has a pretty severe amount of flickering. I'm not sure if that could trigger a seizure, but I don't want to risk it. If you are sensitive to blinking lights, please skip ahead to the time shown on the screen right now. Okay, so here we have our project. And as you can tell, these clips are absolutely wrecked by flicker. I think that we can all pretty much agree that unless you're going for some weird horror movie look, this is pretty much unusable. Let's go ahead and apply Flicker Free, which, as I said earlier, is as easy as dropping it right onto the clip. You should now be able to see the Flicker Free plugin in the FX control panel. And these are the settings we will be using to get rid of the flicker in our footage. One of the things that I really love about using this plugin is that the effect takes place almost instantaneously. It's not like other tools like Warp Stabilizer where it needs a lot of render time and it needs to be re-rendered if you make changes. Certain settings will slow it down slightly, but it's still really fast. And it can also be used with tools like Speed and Warp Stabilizer as well, which is really cool. Now that we have applied Flicker Free to our clip, let's play it with the default settings and see what we have. As you can see, it already looks pretty good, but we can make it look a whole lot better by tweaking the settings. Here are the changes that I made. Please note that this is not the end-all answer to everything. Different situations may need different settings, but this worked pretty well in this particular situation. One cool thing is that this menu is going to look pretty much the same regardless of what platform or software you're using, so if you're using this on another type of editing software, you can expect it to look pretty much like this. One of the first options when you open the plugin are some built-in presets. In my case, I just went with the default setting, but depending on the type of flicker you're experiencing, these can get you pretty close to your end goal. In the latest version of Flicker Free 2, you have the option to use a setting called Use GPU. This will speed up the rendering process even more. If you get a glitchy video or a black screen when you're playing it back, this option might be a little bit much for your system and you will have to disable it. The next setting that we'll be looking into is the sensitivity setting. It isn't always a case of more is better. If you only have flicker in a small portion of your clip, you will be able to get by with a smaller number. However, if the entire frame is affected, you might need to bump up the sensitivity. If the sensitivity is too low, you may also get some ghosting in the video. If you are getting ghosting, you can either raise the sensitivity or enable detect motion and motion compensation. The time radius setting determines how many frames that Flicker Free will be looking at to find the flicker. For example, if you have your value set at 6, Flicker Free will look at 6 frames before and after the current frame. While higher values do seem to work better, they can also introduce ghosting, blur, and artifacts to the video. Generally, fast flicker like you would find in a time-lapse or fast-rolling bands can be fixed with a lower number since they occur more rapidly. Slower flicker will need a higher value since it will take more frames for the flicker to happen. Please note that higher values also take up more memory because the computer is doing a whole lot more work. Lower values take up less memory and render faster. The next setting is threshold, and this controls how much Flicker Free examines the changes in brightness. If you have lighting changes happening that aren't flicker, a high value could produce an odd result. If your time radius and sensitivity seem to be getting rid of almost all of the flicker, you can adjust the setting to see if you can get rid of it completely. Typically 20 and 100 are the two values that seem to work, but sometimes it can be somewhere in between the two. Detect motion and motion compensation settings will help if your shots have a lot of camera movement in them. The detect motion setting does have a drop down that will help Flicker Free figure out what part of the frame has movement in it. If you turn this setting off, it will render faster, but you're also risking having ghosting or blur in your shot. The fast setting won't render quite as fast, but it looks for motion using the same algorithm that the first version of Flicker Free used. The slow setting obviously renders a little more slowly, but it will often produce better results. You can always try off or fast first to see if they get the job done. A lot of the time you can get an idea of how it's working by looking at how it's affected a single frame. If the edges of moving objects are blurred, you need to up the setting. When you have the detect motion set to slow, you can also click show mask, and that will give you a white mask showing the parts of the frame that Flicker Free is actively fixing, and a black mask for the areas that it isn't affecting. While the mask is showing, you can also adjust the mask threshold and radius if Flicker Free isn't fixing the parts of the frame that have flicker in them. This will slow rendering, so use this as a last resort if you need just a tiny bit more power. After you are done, you can switch back to deflicker to get back to the standard view. If you are using the detect motion option on slow, you'll probably also want to run motion compensation. This will help prevent flicker when there's a bunch of motion in the frame by preventing ghosting artifacts. Of course, the harder you make the computer work, the more it's going to bog down, so only use this when needed. You don't always have to run detect motion and motion compensation together, but they do seem to work well together. You may want to try motion compensation turned on and detect motion set to fast. This will add extra analysis to what's moving in the frame. And with that, we have covered pretty much all of the settings inside Flicker Free, and now we can watch a couple more examples of it in action. So once again, I would like to send a huge thank you out to the crew over at Digital Anarchy for making a tool like Flickr free. It's tools like this that help us make and sometimes save very important projects. If you haven't checked out Digital Anarchy's website, we'll have it linked below, and you should head over there because they have other awesome tools as well that might just help your project. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to let us know in the comments below, and also let us know what you would like to see us cover. And until next time, I'm Dustin, and thank you for checking out That Adventure Life.